Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving into the fascinating and, maybe slightly gross, microscopic world of a highly adapted survivor. We're talking about a parasite that specifically targets our canine companions. And honestly, it's a masterclass in biological resilience. We're going to build a complete profile of this villain to understand exactly how it operates, why it's so incredibly successful, and most importantly, how we can stop it. Think about it for a second. Every time your dog sniffs the dirt, picks up a toy from the ground, or just runs wild at a muddy dog park, they're interacting with a vast microscopic ecosystem. And hidden right there within that soil could be the incredibly hardy eggs of the canine whipworm, just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Here's how we're going to build out this villain profile. We'll meet the canine whipworm, look at its parasitic anatomy, trace its survivor life cycle, check out the clinical symptoms, understand why it's such a diagnostic challenge, and finally go over exactly how to protect your pet. All right, let's kick things off. Meet the canine whipworm, known scientifically as Trichuris vulpis. So Trichuris vulpis is an intestinal parasite that causes a disease called trichuriasis, primarily in domestic and wild carnivores, like our dogs. And this thing is found all over the globe. It makes its home directly in a dog's large intestine, specifically the cecum and colon. But it doesn't just float around peacefully in there. Oh no, it causes immense irritation by literally embedding its body right into the intestinal wall. Moving on to its anatomy, let's take a look at its biological weapons. It's pretty obvious how the whipworm gets its name. Just look at that distinct shape. The front end, the anterior part, is elongated and super thin, looking exactly like a long whip. Meanwhile, the back end is heavily thickened and short, acting almost like a handle. And it uses that incredibly thin, whip-like front end to practically sew itself directly into the lining of the dog's intestine. Kind of a nightmare, right? Now, this next bit brilliantly illustrates their sexual dimorphism, which just means the males and females have distinctly different physical traits. Check out the male's reproductive anatomy. He's got this long, filiform spicule covered by a sheath with tiny little cuticular spikes. Contrast that with the female's anatomy, which is characterized by a tubular vagina and very specific papillary processes near the opening. These tiny, distinct structures are exactly what scientists are hunting for under a microscope. And the metric data really highlights just how clear this difference is across 9 different parameters. Basically, the females are the heavyweights here. They're actually significantly larger than the males, by about 12.7% in total body length, reaching up to 55 millimeters long. Their head end is also over 21% longer than the males. It makes total sense when you think about it. She's a larger, more robust parasite because her whole job is mass producing the eggs that will ensure the survival of the next generation. Which brings us to how they survive. Let's trace their life cycle, from the soil straight to the stomach. So, how does this parasite actually get from the dirt into your dog? Well, the crucial point you need to remember is this number, 18. In a lab under optimal conditions of 27 degrees Celsius, it takes a mere 18 days for an egg to develop into a highly infectious stage. And get this, their survivability rate is over 76%. This tells us that not only are these eggs insanely tough, but they're incredibly fast and efficient at preparing for their next victim. During those 18 days, there is a ton happening inside that microscopic egg. The embryo goes through 5 distinct morphological stages of development. It kicks off as a simple protoplast on day 1. By day 3 to 6, it enters blastomer's cleavage, then shapes into a bean-like embryo, develops into a larva, and finally becomes a highly dangerous, fully mobile larva contained within the egg, completely ready to infect a host. Out in the real world, this translates to a brutally simple, direct 4-step contamination cycle. There is no middleman needed here. First, an infected dog passes uninfective eggs in their poop. Second, those eggs incubate in the dirt for about a month to reach that mobile larva stage we just talked about. Third, a dog accidentally swallows that contaminated soil, maybe just by licking your paws after a walk. And fourth, the eggs hatch in the intestine and mature into adults over the next 3 months, and the cycle starts all over again. So, what are the clinical crimes here? Let's talk symptoms and sickness. What actually happens to the host once this villain sets up camp? Now, a lot of dogs might carry a light load of these worms and show absolutely 0 signs. But when a heavy infection hits, the irritation to the large intestine is severe. As the worms embed their whips into the tissue, it leads to chronic, watery, or soft diarrhea, often laced with mucus and bright red blood. And because of all that intense inflammation in the lower bowel, the poor dog feels a constant urge to strain. Over time, this chronic condition leads to unexplained weight loss, even if your dog is eating totally normally. In the absolute most extreme cases, the infection is so heavy and the intestinal damage is so severe that it triggers a condition called pseudo-Addison disease. This is life-threatening. We're talking profound weakness, extreme lethargy, and dangerous electrolyte imbalances. It perfectly mimics true Addison's disease, which is a severe adrenal gland disorder, making it super tricky for a veterinarian to pinpoint without a proper parasite screening. Which leads us perfectly into the diagnostic challenge. Why are these things so incredibly hard to catch? If they cause such major problems, why not just run a quick test at the vet? Well, what you're looking at here is a microscopic view of a female whipworm's uterus, totally packed with eggs. You'd think, with all those eggs, a simple fecal test would spot them immediately, right? But here is the villain's ultimate trick. Female whipworms are notoriously shy shedders. They only lay eggs intermittently and in surprisingly low numbers compared to other parasites. Because of this, routine fecal tests often come back with false negatives. Your dog could be highly infected, but if the female worms didn't lay eggs that specific day, the test won't show a thing. When veterinarians actually do manage to catch them, they're hunting for very specific microscopic evidence. The whipworm egg is super distinct. It varies a bit from barrel-shaped to lemon-shaped, but the dead giveaways are those clear, plug-shaped protrusions on both ends. Plus, check out that smooth, thick shell covering the egg. That shell is an absolute evolutionary marvel. It's exactly what protects the developing larva from harsh weather, letting these eggs survive in the soil for years.
Okay, let's talk defense, protecting your pet and how to defeat the villain.
Now that we know exactly how it operates, how do we keep our dogs safe? Beating whipworms takes a diligent, two-pronged approach. First, keep your dog on a monthly broad-spectrum preventative, usually a heartworm medication that specifically labels it treats and controls whipworms. But medicine alone isn't enough, because the environment is the source. You have to practice meticulous cleanup. That means scooping your dog's poop immediately, every single day. Remember our 18-day incubation rule? If you pick up the poop right away, the eggs literally never get the chance to develop into infective larvae. And if your pet does catch them, you'll need strategic deworming from your vet, usually repeated at 3 weeks and 3 months, just to break that resilient life cycle.
Now, here is a massive sigh of relief for you. Trichuris vulpis is strictly a dog issue. It is not a zoonotic parasite, meaning this specific species of whipworm cannot infect humans. So, while you should obviously still practice good hygiene, you don't have to stress about catching this particular villain from your dog.
Understanding this parasite's incredible biology, from its whip-like anatomy to its heavily armored eggs and sneaky shedding habits, is absolutely the first step to prevention. Knowing what's going on at a microscopic level empowers you to keep your pet safe. So, I have to ask, with this villain profile fresh in your mind, the next time you visit the dog park, will you look at the soil just a little bit differently?